Scott just made
Go
the
back to
point
Thomas
Jefferson
Jefferson,
used
you'll
to
read
be a
that-
lot more secure, not just.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Green, and this is a special three-part trifecta on the future of privacy, of free speech, and the free press, seen through the lens of three wildly different stories about Apple versus the FBI, Twitter versus conservative users, and Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, their party's frontrunners, versus the mainstream media. Now, we've got a lot to go through in just three segments. Let's get Scott Ott and Bill Whittle on here right now so we can talk about Apple, the FBI, encryption, and terrorism. Gents, you know the story. On December 2nd of last year, Saeed Rizwan Farouk and Tashfeen Malik showed up at a San Bernardino County Department of Public Health holiday party, armed to the teeth, and in the space of 4 minutes, shot and killed 14 people, wounded another 24 before being killed by police, perhaps on their way home to rearm and reload. In the ensuing investigation, the FBI got hold of Farouk's Apple iPhone 5C, which may very well contain contact information with members of the Islamic State or other terrorist organizations. Then, as the New York Times reported, the Justice Department had secured a search warrant for the phone owned by Mr. Farouk's former employer, which consented to the search. Because Apple declined to voluntarily provide, in essence, the keys to its encryption technology, federal prosecutors said they saw little choice but to get a judge to compel Apple's assistance. Mr. Cook said the order amounted to creating a backdoor to bypass Apple's strong encryption standards, something we simply do not have and something we consider too dangerous to create. Now, I should add that Apple did turn over Farouk's iCloud backup of his phone, which Apple does hold the digital key to, but the company insists it can't be coerced into creating a brand new tool which could be used to hack anybody's iPhone, even yours. And if Apple caves, so will Google, so will Microsoft, and anyone else making smartphone operating systems. On the other hand, what if the FBI could stop the next terror attack? Scott, I'm not going to pretend this is easy. Where do you draw the line between liberty and security?
You never draw it very well, I'll tell you that, because
Yeah.
obviously the biggest concern people have is for their own lives, and that's legit. I mean, people want to know if there's another terror attack coming. I think it may be wishful thinking to think that if only the FBI were able to have a backdoor to your iPhone, then we would have to worry less about terror attacks. Something tells me that the terrorists would work around that workaround. What's perplexing to me is that the employer that owned the phone, okay, it wasn't Syed's personal telephone, it was his work phone, and his employer owned that phone, and it is a government job. And when you are communicating in government work, all of your communications should be available in a freedom of information request. So they would have had to have access to that phone. It mystifies me that an employer would distribute a phone to which they could not get access should they be required to get it for their own needs.
So you're saying that Farouk being allowed to put his own encryption on a government iPhone is sort of like keeping your own private server in a bathroom if you're a federal employee.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I guess it's ordinary then. It's normal. Okay, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Yeah. Only the little people can't get away with that. All right, as I said, it's a tough case, and it doesn't really lend itself very well to 10-minute video segments. And it's also a weird case. I've seen Apple haters lining up behind Tim Cook, and I've seen right-wingers who hate the Obama Justice Department lining up behind the Obama Justice Department on this one. Now, deep below the FBI versus Apple headlines is an obscure law from 1789 known as the All Writs Act, revised in 1911 and several times since then. Now, the text of the act says, the Supreme Court and all courts established by act of Congress may issue all writs necessary or appropriate in aid of their respective jurisdictions and agreeable to the usages and principles of law. Bill, does the All Writs Act give U.S. Magistrate Judge Sherry Pym the power to compel Apple to divert its own software engineers and who knows how much money in order to break the security measures Apple had promised its users that not even Apple could break? Should a judge have that power? And what about the victims of San Bernardino or future terror attacks?
I was assured when I signed up for the show that there would be no math. I don't know how to answer that question, Steve. It's not that I don't have an opinion on it. I just don't know how to answer it. Let me just dumb it down to a level I can understand here.
Sure.
we have a situation that's a little different than most others. Starting to feel like Hillary Clinton here. Here's the problem. We do have and have had since the beginning of the Republic a legal infrastructure for obtaining information from people that is private information given probable cause that they've either committed a crime or that they were in the conspiracy to commit a crime. These are what our Fourth Amendment protections are all about. The general assumption has been, up until the present, that if there was sufficient evidence that you could convince a judge to issue a warrant, then you could essentially invade this wall of privacy that everyone is presumably entitled to based on probable cause. So far, so good. We do this every day. Every time they write a search warrant, and they write thousands a day, this is legal and it's appropriate, and it's been pretty much well handled throughout the history of the Republic. We got a different problem here, and this is not a slippery slope problem. This is, in fact, cracking a wall problem. This is going into territory that no one's ever been in before. I have to tell you, of all the things that most surprised me about this story, is I am quite utterly shocked and remarkably pleased that my phone is as secure as it appears to be. I had no idea that it was this secure. I thought Apple could just say, yeah, you want Bill's information? No problem. So look, I've said this many times before. As much as I'd like to catch every single one of these sons of guns, we have, in fact, got a problem in this country. The problem is not terrorism. We can survive terrorism. We can survive terrorism. We can survive this socialist waltz we're doing. We can survive the Russians and the Chinese and all the rest of it. The one thing this country cannot survive is the idea that we are not free to speak our mind. If we have to constantly live as Americans in constant fear that the NSA is listening to everything we say, if we have to register as independents because if we register as Republicans, we fear an IRS tax audit, if everything we say on the phone we assume to be listened to by the government, that is a far, 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 far bigger threat to the American ideal than a bunch of 7th century savages with AK-47s, especially among the unarmed population. In my opinion, the value of getting this information is immeasurably outweighed by the danger that this provides. And as I say, it's not a slippery slope. It's not like, well, you know, once we do it once, it's done. And once it's done, anybody can do it. And whether they do it or not is not really the issue. The issue is, do we think they're doing it? The issue is, do we feel secure in our letters and our papers? Do we feel secure having a conversation with somebody or putting information on our phone or making an online transaction and feeling like we can do this with a reasonable degree of security? I can't think of any national security issues, any, that are worth giving up that American sense of being able to speak your mind freely, and that's how I'm coming down on that.
Steve,
All
can
right.
I throw something in?
Yeah, Scott.
It just occurred to me that this case is peculiar because we've got the dead bodies and the phone, okay? We actually caught the guy who everybody acknowledges was the guy who did, and this wife that did the shooting. But I could easily see a circumstance where we didn't catch the guy. I could see a circumstance where the FBI went around his office and said, we need all your phones. We need to see everybody's phone here, and we need to, you know, where you don't have such a clear-cut case. And that's the problem, because once this door is opened, it is permanently opened, and we've basically said to the FBI and to anybody else in the government, to the IRS perhaps, we've said, our lives are transparent to your gaze.
Yeah, you know, folks, Bill and Scott have done such a great job of covering the big issues. I want to bring this down to a more personal level. Imagine you're on a business trip and your flight is landing at your destination after spending several hours in the air incommunicado. You reach for your phone to take it out of airplane mode, and that's when you realize it's gone. It's lost. You left it somewhere at the other airport. That's your smartphone. It has your financial information on it. It's got a message from your wife or your husband saying when and where they'd be going for lunch. It has your home address. It has the names of your children and the elementary school they attend. But you don't worry because you're using the latest version of Apple iOS or Google Android, and your phone is fully encrypted, and you know your data is safe, 100%. The only thing you really have to worry about is the minor hassle of replacing your phone and restoring the encrypted backup, which is really, in the big picture, no big deal. But if Apple is forced to break its own encryption, and Google will surely be forced to do the same, the data on your phone will no longer be secure. Not from government trying to stop terrorists, not from thieves, not from pedophiles, not from a nosy cop with nothing better to do. Now, I buy the best handguns and rifles I can afford, and I learn how to operate them safely and effectively in order to protect my family and my property. I also buy the best encryption available to me, and I've learned how to use it safely and effectively in order, again, to protect my family and my property. Constitutionally, should there be any difference between the two? It's food for thought, I hope. Stay tuned for part 2, the future of free speech on the internet and Twitter's shadow war on conservative users. Until then, for Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, I'm Steve Green.